Alright, as promised in the last video, we've got another matchup here between Gobbo King and Eerie Robin. This time, Eerie Robin is the Dark Elves again, so if he or anybody else that was in the tournament could explain how the picks work, that would be handy. I guess I'm used to seeing players not being able to use the same faction in the same series, but apparently it was within the rules here. And Gobbo King's going to pick the vampires. Let's take a look at the armies real quick and talk through the composition. We're going to see 5 dark shards here. This is an incredibly risky but potentially extremely deadly move by the Dark Elves. Risky in the sense that if you can't protect them, but if you can, it's going to devastate just about any army that you can imagine. There's 2 Witch Elves. Nice support because, again, they can rampage units. I keep saying berserk, but rampage units that get too close. The front line's just Dread Spears, cheap, reliable infantry that can hold for a short amount of time. And then we've got Morathi. There's a 5th Dread Spear out in the woods. And then from a cavalry standpoint, we're going to once again have some Cold One Knights. There's 2 of them here in the woods. And then there are vampires coming in. So yeah, we got a couple of them. Yeah, here's Slaneesh's Harvesters as well. Can't quite see into the woods great. I think there's 2 Cold One Knights. Yeah, 2 Cold One Knights and Slaneesh's Harvesters. And then that Dread Spear. There's some bats, though, doing some scouting, so they're going to spot everything. And then let's look at the vampire army. The 2 bats scouted out the woods. Very nicely done by Gobbo King to make sure he understands what he's up against. His middle is just skeletons, and there's a skeleton spear on either flank. A couple on this flank, so a very weak infantry line. He's got Mannfred von Karstein here. Looks like Curse of Years, Raise the Dead, Invocation of the Heck, and Wind of Death. And then he's got a Mortis Engine, 2 Blood Knights, and the Chillgeist. And the Chillgeist would be a very threatening unit to just about any army, except for the fact that, again, we've got this pick of the Slaneesh's Harvesters here. Something very important to note here, this unit has magical attacks, and that's going to be absolutely brutal in this particular case, because the magical attacks are going to do fantastic as the Hex Wraiths are ethereal, meaning that they have physical resistance, but they do not resist the attacks from magical. And what that means is typically a unit with high physical resistance has low overall hit points, so that they're not completely overpowered against units with physical attacks. So when they run into a unit with magical attacks, they die particularly quick. And the Dark Shards are going to open fire, force the vampires into a committal of their bats. So here comes the vampires. They're going to commit with the bats, and then even though he knows they're here comes out of the woods some of the Cold One Knights. More bats, though. They know they have to break these units up. And here comes the Chillgeist, hoping to get a nice flank charge in. They can sometimes cause terror pretty quickly. So they're going to come charging in from the flank and try and get in a nice charge here. Over on this side, you can see the Mortis Engine coming in. Right now, all of the Dark Shards are tangled up in a fight, which is perfect for the vampires, so they can get this Mortis Engine in. But their Skeleton Spears are not going to last long in this fight. They're going to have to be dealt with. Yeah, so the infantry fight fully underway, and the Hex Wraiths get caught up with Slaneesh's Harvesters and attempt to retreat, but just look how quickly the Hex Wraiths get pulled apart in that fight. They're half dead just trying to retreat from the Slaneesh's Harvesters. Here comes the Blood Knights, but the Chillgeist get rampaged, and the Blood Knights are liable to get rampaged here too, and they're going to get hit with a Soul Stealer, while Morathi dives down to help finish the Mortis Engine, which is badly damaged at this point. Got hit hard, I think by a combination of crossbows and then perhaps a hit from these Cold One Knights. So the Mortis Engine's gone. The crossbows are still tied up with a few units. Some of them even got scared out of the fight by terror and are fleeing, but they're not dealt with yet. The infantry fight, of course, just grinding out here, and that's what the vampires typically want. They just need a fight to grind. There's some Dire Wolves and Blood Knights trying to make their way around the flank. These Witch Elves are owning the Skeleton Spears, so that's a tough situation for the vampire counts. Mannfred is trying to pin down all these Dark Shards. If he has zombies to summon, this could be a great time to do it, to try and get rid of these Dark Shards, because unless he can, the fight's probably over. But, I mean, at this point, the Cold One Knights, combined with the Witch Elves, have destroyed a Blood Knight. They've mostly destroyed Slaneesh's, the Chillgeist, which is continually being pursued by Slaneesh's Harvesters, again because of their magic attacks. So if I take a look at it here, almost all of the dark shards are escaping. They are being pursued now by dire wolves, but the dire wolves are now going to be intercepted by Cold One Knights, who should pretty swiftly put an end to them. More Blood Knights charging in, but there's still sisters nearby, and once they cut their witch elves, sorry, when they cut their way through the zombies, those Blood Knights are going to again find themselves in quite a bit of trouble. So you can see here the Slaneesh's Harvesters and Morathi taking out the dire wolves, and look at this. This is disaster for the vampires. It's absolute disaster. Every single dark shard unit, although damaged, is now free, and they're going to turn and start firing into the fight, and this is just going to be a hail of armor-piercing missiles. And the vampire player, Gabo King, he knew it, and he admitted defeat. He was going to summon a zombie here, but he admits defeat. He's definitely in the throes of defeat there. Like I said, interesting to see so many skirmishers picked against the vampires, but it's the way he protected them here, I think, that made it so effective. He has the Cold One Knights. He's only got 2 units of them, and then remember there was 2 Blood Knights. But that Slaneesh's Harvester ended up being a very solid pick because it was able to pair up against the Chillgeist, which would have otherwise been an extremely devastating unit to deal with. The Chillgeist cause terror, they slow everything down, and if you don't have magical attacks, they are a nightmare to bring down. They can cause all kinds of routes amongst cheap units that don't have immune to psychology, and that's a lot, if not all, of the units that were on the battlefield here for the Dark Elves. But, again, that Slaneesh's Harvester, that one pick, ended up being extremely clutch there, and that kind of sucks for Gabo King because that's difficult to deal with. It's one of those things that you make a pick, you get into the fight, and you're just like, crap. And you realize that there's not much you can do about it at that point. Tying down and destroying 5 Dark Shards is going to be a tall order when one of your cavalry is extremely vulnerable to this one. The other 2, sure, they could possibly defeat the Cold One Knights, but it's difficult to do when you've got a Witch Elf roaming around and Morathi dropping Soul Stealer and stuff like that. Again, it can be done. The trick to the vampires is you need to have the right pick, which I'm not saying Gabo King's pick is wrong. He's got Disruption for skirmishers. He's got a light unit to run down skirmishers. He's got a Mortis engine to help support what's an otherwise weak infantry line. And then he's got plenty of anti-large capability if needed, with summons on Mannfred. So again, potentially the right troops here to take care, but I mean, it's hard tying down 5 Dark Shards in this environment. So I mean, if I were coming up against the Dark Elves, I wouldn't expect them to pick that many skirmishers against the vampires because I would think, oh, it's too hard to protect that. That in and of itself would throw me off. Again, I don't know if that type of thing would work on Gabo King or other competitive players, but it was interesting for me to see him pick that many Dark Shards coming up against a faction that can typically make life kind of miserable for someone who picks a lot of skirmishers. So, interesting, nicely played battles by Iru, so congratulations, Iru. Gabo King, thank you for also helping us watch some awesome battles and participating in the tournament. We always love your replays. I just hate being up against your Goblin armies. They're OP, man. They're too good. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. Let's thank them in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the thumbs up. If you want to subscribe so you can see more, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. Be the first one to be notified when there's new content. And guess what? There will be new content soon. Keep an eye out. HeirofCarthage, signing out for now.